where is this headed? Where's your next technical support? Inflation caused more than half of the inflation last year as company profits remained at all-time highs. Greedflation is still inflation. Bitcoin has breached that key level that I've talked about here that I think it sends it to 38,000, give or take. So again, notice again, this trend line goes all the way through here. And what we could see here again is it has broken below that. That is to be expected. Remember, I talked about how the hype leads you to these key levels. All right, so
wait a minute, everyone. Get ready for the ultimate crypto investing website, the Bitcoin Seller. It's your golden ticket to an exclusive insiders club. Expert predictions, on-chain data, and breaking news, all for you. Imagine all crypto insights landing in your inbox daily, like having your own expert team. Don't miss this VIP opportunity. Click the link and secure your spot. Join now and ride the crypto roller coaster with the Bitcoin Seller. Gareth Soloway will tell us where Bitcoin is going next, what is the key level to watch, and why inflation is not what you think it is. He will also share his insights on how to spot the hype and avoid the traps in the crypto market. You don't want to miss this exciting interview with one of the smartest and most successful people in the industry. So stay tuned as we jump into the conversation with Gareth Soloway.
Bitcoin has breached that key level that I've talked about here that I think it sends it to 38,000, give or take. So again, notice again, this trend line goes all the way through here. And what we could see here again is it has broken below that. That is to be expected. Remember, I talked about how the hype leads you to these key levels. All right, so where is this headed? Where's your next technical support? If we take a trend line here and we stretch it across here, this is your next support right around 38, give or take. You can see all of the technical levels right here, right here, right here, and right here going right through this flat area. That will yield support right down here. So if we do see a flush, 38,000 should be some significant support on Bitcoin. One other thing I just wanted to show you guys on Bitcoin, guys, and again, this is just, I really want you guys to be able to learn. So I think this is one of the most important things on Bitcoin. Let's jump to this bigger chart. This is the weekly chart on Bitcoin. Now, the reason why I want to point this out is because there was so much hype coming into the spot ETF that people were throwing out crazy numbers like it's going to shoot right to 100,000. Within a year, it'll be 150,000, maybe 220,000. I mean, you could name it. There were crazy targets. But again, it's the difference between people living in fantasy land versus living in reality. And I live in reality where there's charts. And charts are basically data points. And data help me stay grounded. It doesn't mean it's going to be right. It's not always right. But at least it keeps me grounded from thinking these ludicrous type things. And by the way, do I think eventually one day Bitcoin hits 200,000? Yes. Maybe in 5 years from now. We'll see. But to say it's going to happen when the data is not clearly pointing to that is asinine, frankly. All right, so what do we know here? Well, let's take a look. So back in 2017, do you guys remember what caused this top? This top right here, the bull market high, that was your futures starting to trade on Bitcoin. Futures top right there, we'll put an F right there. This one, we're going to put a C here. Why? Because this was the IPO for Coinbase. Think about, remember the hype. IPO for Coinbase, literally right here at the highs. What happened right here in late 2021? The ETF, all right, ETF for the futures market, we'll circle the F, that was your high pivot there. So the point is, if you look at pretty much every major high in Bitcoin, it has coincided with a major event that has driven hype to unrealistic levels, and that's where you have a potential top. So again, it's not that I'm going to be right on this, right? It's not to say that we have made a significant top on Bitcoin, but the odds, think about the odds of what I just showed you, right? What are the odds that at least this is a multi-month high on Bitcoin right here? And the odds, honestly, when you look back and you look at every major pivot, the odds are, yeah, it could be a top at least for multi-months. Now listen, maybe by late this year we start breaking through it. I'm ultimately a huge long-term bull on Bitcoin, but I'm also a realist. And realists come with data. They come with stuff to back up their statements, not like, oh my goodness, the dollar's gonna, how many narratives have we been through? The demise of the dollar's gonna be worthless. I heard that about 10 times last year alone. Think about it from a chart perspective, because honestly, it serves you better. It keeps you from buying. Think about the amount of, remember, Bitcoin traded up here. That means people were buying it up there. They were caught up in that narrative. Don't get caught up in narratives, guys. Just look at the charts. Let them guide you. I talked about a major trend line right here on Solana. Look at that trend line. It has now broken, all right? So we have broken this trend line. Now, the level of support, I'm going to go through support and resistance on some of these cryptos because I know you guys have been begging for them, and I really do my best to kind of deliver. But basically what we're looking for is a move down right here. See this flat top right there? That's your next support level, right around $76, 77, 76, 75, right in that level. So that's my anticipation is you got another $10 down on Solana here in the near term.
Gareth Soloway tells us why he thinks Bitcoin is going down and what is the next level to watch. He has a key level that he follows, and Bitcoin has broken below it. This means for Gareth that Bitcoin could fall to 38,000, which is a strong support level. Gareth explains that support levels are areas where buyers come in and stop the price from falling further. Bitcoin often falls after a lot of hype and unrealistic expectations. Gareth then shows us a weekly chart of Bitcoin and says there was a lot of hype about the spot ETF, which is a product that lets people buy and sell Bitcoin easily. Some people said Bitcoin would go to 100,000 or even 220,000 in a year, but he sees that as crazy. He likes to look at the charts and the data, not the stories. Bitcoin might go to 200,000 someday, but not without clear evidence from Gareth's perspective. He then points out the major highs in Bitcoin and says they all happened after a big event that made people excited and greedy. In 2017, it was the launch of Bitcoin futures, which are contracts that let people bet on the future price of Bitcoin. In 2021, it was the Coinbase IPO, which was the first time a big crypto company went public, and the ETF for the futures market, which was another product that made Bitcoin more accessible. These events marked possible tops, which are areas where sellers come in and push the price down. He is not sure, but he thinks this could be another top for Bitcoin, and it could last for a few months. He still likes Bitcoin for the long term, but he is realistic and based on data. He doesn't get carried away by the stories. He looks at the charts. He also looks at other cryptocurrencies, like Solana, which is a fast and cheap network that supports many applications. If Solana has broken its major trend line, which is a line that shows the direction of the price, he thinks this means Solana could fall to $76.77, which is another support level, and lose $10 in the short term.
Over the last week or two, the SMH, the semiconductors, NVIDIA, AMD, you name it, they are racing higher. There's an over-allocation beginning to go, massive greed coming into the space. I'm going to show you a really interesting chart in just a couple minutes that's going to kind of really put it into perspective how insane this is getting. All right, but again, we are still looking at that SMH. Remember on Friday, I talked about the max move on SMH, the semiconductor ETF, right around 194 to 195. That's where I'm looking at this point. We actually had a monster move on Friday after I went and talked about that. Now we're getting very close. Now trading basically at 189 on the SMH. Okay, greedflation. I want to talk to you a little bit about greedflation. So what greedflation is, and greedflation caused more than half of the inflation last year as company profits remained at all-time highs. Now, again, greedflation is still inflation. It doesn't matter. But my point is this, is that we saw company profits make new all-time highs or at least stay at all-time highs during this entire period of inflation that we've been through in the U.S., really in the world. Now, the reason why it's called greedflation is that in general, what that's telling you is that these companies pushed all the price increases. They didn't take any of those price increases themselves. They pushed it all onto you as a consumer, and you guys, me included, we are the ones that shouldered the burden for that inflation. Now, the only reason that works is because the market is being flooded with liquidity, and even though the Fed is tightened, the U.S. government has spent more and more money. We know the U.S. national debt, 34+ trillion, and rising continually, and that's the only way they've gotten away from it, guys. The only way. And remember, credit card debt, new all-time highs, 1.1 trillion. We just continue to spike. So the U.S. consumer is hurting, but there's enough liquidity in the market, enough loans, enough credit card allowances to allow them to continue to spend. At some point, that breaks, and that's where basically the house of cards starts tumbling down. Next up, we have JP Morgan analyst says that market is overbought. It needs better earnings to keep climbing, but the analyst warns that that's not likely to happen. So what this analyst is saying, guys, to break it down, is that you have the stock market at such crazy levels that even good earnings are probably not going to be the catalyst for further upside. We'll have to watch and see what those earnings come out, but we are entering earnings season. Okay, a couple other things here, guys, as I scroll through. Some of the big headlines for me here. We have natural gas continues to collapse as the country begins to kind of, basically, we see the country starting to warm up, right? We went through this big, deep freeze just this last weekend, even here in Florida. It almost got to freezing. And again, now we're starting to move out of it. That's pushing natural gas down. I'll reveal my latest entry on natural gas just in a little bit. All right, China. China's stock market continues to collapse. The country begins to do outreach to businesses in Davos and beyond. So one of the big highlights from Davos recently, where all these big heads of state and leaders were talking, and business leaders, was that there was a huge delegation of the Chinese. They're trying to get businesses to come back to China to stimulate their economy. Now, for me, I take note of that. I take note of how nasty the stock market's gotten there. Is there an opportunity? Is the tide eventually going to turn into something that I can make money as a swing trader on? All right, again, key symbols there, FXI, KWEB, those are the two ETFs I follow. Baba and Baidu, some of the biggest names. Tencent would be another one. 76 S&P companies report earnings this week. Big names include Netflix, IBM, American United Airlines, 3M, GE, Texas Instruments, Tesla, Intel, Visa, and a lot more. So big amounts of companies reporting this week. Then next week, we'll get Amazon and Apple and a bunch of these other ones. It is going to get crazy in the market.
Gareth Soloway tells us why he thinks the semiconductor industry is getting too greedy and what that means for the market. He has a chart that shows how the SEMO, which is a fund that tracks the performance of the biggest semiconductor companies, has been soaring. He predicted that the SEMO could reach 194 or 195, but it already jumped to 189. Gareth then talks about a new word, greedflation. Greedflation is when companies raise their prices and make more profits, even though their costs are not going up. This causes inflation, which is when the value of money goes down and everything becomes more expensive. Greedflation happened a lot last year because companies took advantage of the money that the Fed and the government pumped into the economy. People kept spending, even though they had a lot of debt. He sees that this situation is not sustainable, and it could collapse at some point. He then quotes some analysts from JP Morgan, who say that the market is too high and needs better earnings to keep going up. Gareth says they doubt that the earnings will be good enough, even though many companies will report their results soon. Gareth also mentions natural gas, which is a type of fuel that is used for heating and electricity. Natural gas prices have been falling because the weather has been warmer and there's less demand. China's stock market is also falling because the president has more power and the economy is slowing down. He also explained that China is trying to talk to businesses in Davos, which is a place where world leaders and CEOs meet every year. He is watching some Chinese stocks closely because they could affect the market. He then lists some of the companies that will report their earnings in the next 2 weeks, such as Netflix, IBM, Tesla, Amazon, and Apple. He sees that it will be a busy time for the market. If you've been with us so far, a big thank you. Don't forget to subscribe for free to Bitcoin Seller for your daily news. The link is waiting below. That's all for today's crypto news. Stick around for more updates, insights, and analysis on cryptocurrencies. Share your thoughts in the comments, like this video, and subscribe for more exciting content.